Welcome back for another episode of Sunday Soul Day. We sit down with Clayton Gravesande, a former NCAA All-American track star, entrepreneur, and reality TV personality from Love is Blind Season 6. Clayton opens up about his journey transitioning out of sports to building his own jet and boat rental business in Charlotte, North Carolina.
You do this every day? Yeah. Why? Because I love it.
Clayton shares pivotal moments from the show and the emotional highs and lows of public scrutiny after Love is Blind. We dive into mental health, resilience, and the challenges of being in the spotlight. Let's welcome him to the show. Welcome to Sunday Soul Day, Clay.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming on. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yeah, same here, same here. We had a good conversation last time we talked, so I'm excited.
We sure did. We sure did. Well, it's so interesting because we got connected through my friend Sean French, and I wanted to just tell the audience how you guys know each other. It's hilarious, the story. So I don't know if you want to give a shortened version, but I love that he connected us.
Yeah, Sean's a good guy. So Sean is a big fan of Love is Blind. So he was actually following me before. I didn't know that. And I'm a big sports guy. I think LeBron had a post up, and some of these older guys are talking about LeBron and like how he wouldn't be as successful in this generation, or how players in the new generation wouldn't be successful in the older generation. I, of course, got triggered by that comment as a millennial. And I said, hey, I think the guys that playing in the basketball in this era will do awesome in the old generation. Where Sean stepped in and said, hey, I don't know, man. I don't know if these guys can hang with Jordan. So we actually started off a relationship having a back and forth over a LeBron and Jordan debate. And I ended up not getting offended. I sent him my number. We started having conversations, and he invited me over to his podcast, and we had a really good time.
I love that. Yeah, that sounds exactly Sean. Like
Yeah.
coming in, like bantering a little bit, but just doing it with, love too. So so glad he connected us. Well, speaking of athletics, you are an NCAA All-American track and field star. And you've done sports for so many years, early on in life, and I'm sure it's a part of your identity. But like, how did you transition out of that? Because what I've found, being a competitor myself, also who ran track and field for UCLA, is that transition out of sports is just really challenging.
Yeah, that it really is. You have a identity crisis after you graduate. For me, I was a 400-meter runner myself. I got a full ride scholarship out of South Carolina, and that was my identity. That gave me my confidence because I came. Track and field was the first sport that acknowledged me and made people actually see me for who I view myself as, and it was the first time I actually got that validation. So a lot of my identity was backed on track and field. So I remember my junior year, I tore my hamstring. That was the first kind of realization that I possibly won't go pro. And I remember that was a very depressing time. I was hurt. I went back home. I remember I wasn't getting treated the same because essentially when I was doing really well, I had a lot of yes men around me, a lot of people who like to benefit off of the success that I was having. And then when I was hurt, it was kind of like, well, when we're not going to the fancy track meets, I don't have the fancy stories. I've been hurt for 6 months and I kind of need people's help, to kind of get around. And I felt like it was a little bit of a coldness there. So that was like my first realization of, oh, I probably need to look into employment after I graduated. So my senior year, I was kind of hyper focused on that, but I had an identity crisis because I want to say about 6 years prior to that, all my energy, my identity was all to track and field. So it was a very tough realization of trying to move on. What will I do next? What will actually feed that validation? And it even got into maybe a little bit of a wormhole where I put my validation of, all right, well, I want that love that I got from track and field. Let me try to chase that with capitalism. Let me try to be successful. Let me try to make sure that I'm doing so well that people, even though I'm not running track no more, people still see me in that light. And you're chasing this validation over and over again. I think athletes, we probably struggle with that because we do live a little bit of a different life, where people are validating you and you're getting this dopamine that's not really, I would say, genuine, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Gosh, that is like liquid gold. And it's so true. Like I've seen this with so many athletes transitioning out of like so many different stages, from high school to college to the pros. My father played professional football, for 11 years. And, watching that transition out of it, along with some of my friends who played professionally, they just struggle with it because that has been your entire life, your dedication, like your hyper focus, like you said, on your entire life is centered around it, every aspect of your wheel of life if you're looking at it, right?
Yeah.
And so to transition out of that and have it like taken away, it's like you don't even know who you are.
Hmm.
So it's like, some athletes, they transition out of it well because maybe they've already started to transition slowly, and think of some new kind of challenges that they can tackle. And some really struggle with it. Some turn to, substance abuse and struggle with depression and all sorts of things. Like, when you look back on, that kind of external validation and the support that you were receiving when you were, quote unquote, winning. Do you think that stemmed from early childhood? Like, did you have a lot of support from like your mom and your dad? Like, did you get a lot of external, kind of validation from both of them?
I did. But I was like, like any kid, sometimes you believe that the support that you get from your parents is you're supposed to get that. And always when I was a kid, I've always wanted the outside people to look at me like that as well. I would say more so my mom always validated me. Even if I was last place, my mom will always make me feel like I was number one. So she did a great job as a mother. My dad was a little bit different. He was more in a competitive sense. My dad did well athletically when he was younger. So it was a little bit more of a hard coaching perspective. And my dad wanted me to be in that limelight. So, he could have a little bit bragging rights when he's around his buddies and they talking about sports. And he doesn't want to be the one like, yeah, my son's on the bench. Like he wants like, yeah, my son's contributing. So for a while, I always remember that I felt like what I was doing was not good enough for my dad, but I don't want to put that on my dad. It's not like he vocalized that ever to me. That was just always how I felt. But I always felt like, you know, me not being number one, me not, getting first place or being on the varsity team or being a starter receiver at Pop Warner era. I didn't give my dad that excitement, so I didn't get like those perks that maybe like a favorite would get because I wasn't that guy. And I always remember when I started doing well, I do remember my dad definitely treated me a lot different. I definitely got a lot more perks.
But it goes back to exactly what we are talking about, right? It's like that's the feeling that I think a lot of athletes are looking for. It's like it
Yeah.
comes with so many perks. I mean, not many people can say that they walk into a stadium with thousands of people like screaming their name or recognizing them or, so it's just such a different world, I feel like, athletes live in that is a little distorted in some ways,
No,
and
it's
it's
delusional. I
definitely
always say that I lived in a
yeah, it's like
beautiful
completely
delusional bubble.
delusional. That's amazing. That
Yeah.
is funny. Well,
I would say my teachers were nice to me. I was able to
aw.
like, from a popularity perspective, my popularity grew. I remember I hosted a TV show called One TV. When I wasn't doing athletic stuff, they had me doing the camera work. When I started doing well athletically, they said, Clay, get in front of the camera. So it changes.
No, it does. And I mean, I remember even for myself, like I think it's a respect level too. That whether you're working, whether you're doing sports, like there is a respect level where people do look at you differently for whatever their reasons are, right? And you feel it. You can, I mean, even I felt it when I was winning and breaking records, and you're just treated differently. um,
Yeah.
and so I had to really learn that all of that was, I'm not going to say it was ingenuine, but it really is false reality. I had to really like look internally and learn to validate myself at a young age, and understand that, I don't look to any external validation to validate my existence, my greatness, because God already did that.
Yeah. And,
So
and I wish I would have had that level of understanding from an early age because it took me a while I'm still to this day, I think that even affected me with the show, even with my life of just always kind of seeking that validation because I never even got the perception behind it because once track and field finished, I was searching for that again. And I stopped running track and field because I felt like the trajectory of me getting that validation was going to dim out. I didn't want to be running for no contract and people looking like you're running track, but are you getting paid? I didn't want to have this conversation. I wanted people to look at me as successful. So I got into tech sales. I did stuff that I didn't really want to do off of, trying to, feed this scratch of validation, trying to, capture capitalism and trying to, get as much money as possible and doing things that don't necessarily make me happy, but because this is what I believe that people in society will want to see from me.
That is so interesting. That is so interesting. And I find that with so many athletes, like when they're transitioning out of their sport, going into, tech, or any sort of business, corporation, like they're chasing that,
Yeah.
those same kind of accolades. What made you transition into becoming an entrepreneur? Because you did the tech sales, but then now you are, an established business owner and you own your own jet and boat business, which is so amazing in the Charlotte area. Shout out to
Thank you.
Charlotte.
Yeah, I got into the business. It was during the pandemic. Around this time, I started getting more into like reading books, trying to empower myself, trying to get into financial literacy. I worked at IBM when that was my first tech. Well, Verizon was my first tech job. Then I went to IBM, and at this point, it was about like year three, and IBM was a challenging job. And I feel like around this time, I'm a quota base, and I always had that back of my mind, like, I could have a good year, but what if I have a bad year? What does that mean for me from a job retainment perspective? So I just never wanted a job to let me go, and I had nothing, from myself. So that fear just kept on multiplying, where I was like, I didn't want nobody to determine my livelihood and my financial stability. So I remember during the pandemic, I went to Charlotte. Charlotte was pretty much shut down. The lake had a lot of people out there. There was a lot of Black people that were customers, but we didn't own any of the boats. And I saw a ton of boats out there on the lake. So I said, this is a recession-proof business. And, it's actually fun. Like, this is advertised well. This could be fun. And I thought that would be a unique opportunity to get people of color to the lake because I don't think that there was a market with that. So I just thought it was a cool opportunity. I kind of had like an epiphany, and then thought it would be cool to bring jet skis, boats, now boat cars to Charlotte, kind of have it as a tourist attraction. And now we're doing events like R&B on the lake, karaoke, doing comedy on a boat, definitely events that you will have on land, bringing it to the lake, just have a different type of vibe and make Charlotte a little bit more of a tourist attraction.
I love that. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. R&B on the lake. Oh, so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's
I
fun.
love R&B. That's so
Me
good.
too.
Oh my goodness. Well, now tell me like because I can imagine like you saw a great opportunity and I love that athlete in you just like went for it. What sort of challenges for kind of new entrepreneurs, did you kind of run into and how did you overcome them?
So challenges as an entrepreneur is kind of like the mental fortitude. So like,
Mhm.
I always believe that success loves speed, but sometimes you don't know what you're doing and you kind of hit roadblocks where it's tough to get motivated. So like, how do you get to get that motivation again? How do you get to the next step? So I think I've struggled with that of like how to constantly motivate myself and not feeling like, because I worked for my business. When you first start your job, when you first start your own entrepreneurship, you know, a lot of times you don't have as much money. You're probably using other people's money to fund your business. And you want to retain as much ROI as possible. So essentially, a lot of times, a lot of entrepreneurs work for the business. So for me, that was my case. I was working my 9 to 5. I was getting off, working my entrepreneur stuff. I was working from like on weekends from Friday to Sundays. I'm working, 10 to 7 p.m. On the weekdays, I'm working my 8 to 5, so I'm not really getting much of a break. I'm working, 60 plus hours a week. So that was difficult for me to adjust because I thought I knew what hard work was, but like when you have your own business and you have to do the marketing, you have to do the customer service, the customer experience, the logistics, the financial aspect of it, you almost feel like it's not enough time in a day to take care of everything. So a big part that I had to learn was also delegating job opportunities and understanding that I have the vision, and that is valuable, and I'm allowed to pay other people for the vision that I have, and that's still gonna matter, like me, and also like not trying to penny pinch and like, all right, I need to work everything in my business. You could pay somebody $10, $15 an hour to kind of accomplish the same thing, and you could use that hour or whatever 4 hours you need for that employee to do stuff and put it towards something that's more scalable for your business, like marketing or ad dollars, or I don't know, going to different spaces where you can have different conversations. But that was a big thing for me to learn, is like my time is valuable and how to utilize the time to the best ability that actually generates some revenue dollars, instead of me just thinking that me working in the business is the same thing.
Oh, that's so good for entrepreneurs. And it's something that I am learning, like it's really like a rhythm to entrepreneurship. And
Mhm.
I think that's the challenge that we tend to face is, we're like, we got to run fast, right? But then sometimes you're running fast in the wrong direction,
Yeah.
And so it doesn't mean that you can't pivot, but it also is so great when you have those moments to slow down and give yourself time back by, delegating some parts of your business, whether you're using AI, whether you're using an actual person, a VA. I think it's just such great advice, especially in the beginning because we're essentially solopreneurs when we first start, So
Yep.
so doing, everything. And I wouldn't probably trade that, journey because I think I learned so much and was able to challenge myself a ton. But now I'm in a place trying to figure out like who can help me move the needle forward, who can help me scale. So really,
Yeah.
really great advice.
I
Well,
appreciate it.
I am so curious, like how did the whole Love is Blind come about? Because most people tend to apply to Love is Blind, right? And I think you were
Yeah.
kind of cherry picked for this.
What's funny? I talked to a couple people who've done Love is Blind, and I believe that most of the people who are on Love is Blind never applied. We got recruited. There's only
Oh,
probably a handful of people who actually applied that get selected. So take that information as you want, But
interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, they actually came into my Instagram DMs. It was called like the Charlotte Single Project. They were interested in, working with me, and they pitched a concept. I thought it was a beautiful concept, because, in my past, I've always kind of fell in love from a physical perspective. So I thought it was a unique opportunity for me to build a connection emotionally. And, that was something I felt like I struggled with, especially I'm 30 now, and I want to date better with more intention. I thought it was a unique opportunity for me to do that. Of course, the internet saw me and was like, "He's not a guy that wants love; he's a player." And I was like, "Hey, I do want love," but they took it around, ran with it. But it was
So
a great opportunity, and I do think that it was a good chance for me to actually build an emotional connection and actually see that as like, oh, I could do this. I think that probably was the best aspect of it.
Well, and it's so interesting because, it's rare that folks go on TV to find love, right? Um,
Yeah.
and it's such a unique experience, Like, talk to me a little bit about that, for folks who probably will never be on TV, looking for love. Like, what was that like, like having cameras in your face, like just the whole experience. Like, I couldn't even imagine.
Actually doing it wasn't as bad. The only thing I would say
Interesting.
was bad is that, like, so you're an entrepreneur, so you could definitely get this. I always say there's not enough time in the day, and then when you're trying to film a show, there's definitely not enough time in the day. So you almost feel like when you're filming, that's a whole nother job. So during Love Is Blind, I had three jobs. I worked my 9 to 5. I was at IBM at the time. I did filming for Love Is Blind, and then I also on the weekends had to do Wave Sandy water rental stuff. So I had three jobs, no break, and I also had to find time to well for my fiance at the time. So it was a lot, and I was doomed from the beginning. But it, being on the show, um, I would say whenever you're on TV, try to be as concise as possible, but also get into the point. Because one thing that I didn't realize, I never did a TV show. I never even watched reality TV. You're getting filmed throughout the whole day, but there's probably only going to be about 2 hours of film time of you when the actual show airs. So let's say you're out there for a month and they're filming you for 14 hours a day. More than 80 to 90% of that footage will never be seen. So whenever you do talk, try to be concise so there's not much for you then to edit you. I felt as though I was a little bit too free. I talked a lot about stuff, and we signed contracts where they can take the storyline and kind of put it any way they want. They didn't do anything egregious. They told their story, and parts of their story that they told was our actual story, but it did miss a little context, which I was a little offended about. But I took it. I take punches, light punches, like with a grain of salt. Like at the end of the day, it was a chance for me to see myself falling in love. That was weird.
Yeah.
Watching yourself, talking to a girl, trying to pursue her. It's weird watching that back. It's kind of like watching film. And all the athletes know when you watch film, that could be an awkward setting because you're watching your mistakes with all your teammates. I essentially was watching my mistakes with the whole world, and that was awkward.
That's what I'm talking about. I just couldn't imagine. I'm like, even me just dating, I'm already like,
Yeah,
the whole dating world in general is just weird to me,
it is.
I'm single right now, single mom, but it's just like I don't really date, like
Yeah.
I'm very intentional and I'm purposeful. And so when people ask me like, "Oh, do you date?" I'm like, "No." Because I'm just intentional, like I'm not looking to date a bunch of people. So I
Yeah.
couldn't even imagine like having cameras in my face, like, trying to, keep it cool, but also like get to know them. And so
Well,
that's,
I didn't think this thing out all the way. I was
yeah,
thinking like I'm gonna find my person and I'm not gonna have to worry about even interacting with anybody again. I was thinking it's gonna work, or
yeah,
at least I'm gonna not make it on that. I'm not gonna make it far where no one's even gonna like be able to dissect me.
yeah.
And I made it far, and then I said no, and yeah,
Oh, yes. I watched that episode. I actually don't watch TV. I think I shared this with you, but I definitely wanted to watch just to get the whole feeling before we spoke. And talk to me a little bit about after the show because you received a lot of backlash, particularly from Black women.
yeah,
And, like I can't imagine what that felt like. I know that you left your fiance at the altar.
yeah.
How did you kind of navigate that criticism? And, what would you say to people now, like who judged you based on like what they saw on TV?
That was definitely difficult to navigate, especially because, historically, like I've dated Black women, and, Black women has been, amazing in my life. They've changed my life to help me out in my life. So to kind of see like, I don't know what the right terminology is, but like genre, group based, people that you identify with. Most of my life has been around Black women. I never thought that Black women would be would be the type to like give me so much hate. Cause like I've only dated Black women, like they were calling me a colorist, they called me gay on the show, and it
Mhm.
was like, damn, like I've actually went out my way to defend Black women in rooms where they weren't protected.
Yeah.
So I've always it hurt my feelings a little bit dealing with that, but I also have to understand, and it took me a while to kind of get grips with this. You know, AD was a good person, and the way her personality resonated with a lot of women on that screen. Whereas, although I don't think Netflix showed my personality, I do have a little bit of a flamboyant, cocky, so people could identify me as, somebody that they dated in the past, so I think it was a lot of projecting going on when Love Is Blind came out. A lot of women probably saw themselves as AD, and so I understand that, and I understand where you want a couple to work out so much, and at the last minute, someone says no. And it's like, damn, what do we women have to do to actually make this work? But that is the thing that I wish Netflix did a good job of explaining. Let's stop making men the bad guys and let's start having a real conversation and where we can as men articulate and say, hey, these are the reasons why I didn't think that you were my wife. Because that could be education behind it. It could be as harsh as it is, there could be education behind it. And I believe that I had a valid reason for saying no. You know, at the end of the day, I loved AD, but we have 5 weeks to get married. And in those 5 weeks, it's like a test. It's like if I'm taking a test, I'm preparing to pass this test, this bar exam or whatever. If I have these questions, and it doesn't matter if you qualified to take the test, because I'm assuming the arrangement and me proposing was the qualification. You know, once we get past that, if I have questions or if I have certain qualifications that I want in my wife and it doesn't match to that, just because if I, you know, me saying no, it's not saying she's a bad person. It's just saying that, hey, for the 5 weeks, it just was not enough for me to get married. It was very simple to me, but I also understand my decision saying it at the altar. And if for that one, I made a mistake. I should never have said no at the altar. I should have had that conversation prior, but I let my life get in a hold of everything. Like I said, I had 3 jobs. I was on a performance plan for my for IBM. I literally had to go close this deal, and my wedding week was the same week of me getting put on this performance plan. I also had to run an event for Wave Sandy. So this is my fault, but the wedding was probably number 3 on my priority list for that week because I knew that if this once the show ended, I'm still gonna have to go back to IBM. So my main priority was to make sure that I closed this deal. And I should have had a conversation with AD prior to that, but the experiment is 5 weeks. Once you leave Dominican Republic, which is the romantic getaway, is about 2.5 weeks of filming. Everything's accelerated. So I'm going back and forth during this whole time, and I don't have a definitive answer. So my one regret is that I would have wished that I would have made sure I came with a definitive answer before the wedding day, because that would have made everything go a little bit more smoothly.
Thank you so much for sharing and giving us that kind of behind the scenes that, probably wasn't shown.
Yeah,
Like reality TV is so quick, right? And so they can only show so much in an episode. And it's so interesting because you said so much. So I'm going to try and recap it. It's like I think a lot of people watch shows and they get emotionally invested in the whole situation, whatever it is, whether it's a sitcom, whether it's a reality TV show, a game show, but people get so emotionally invested that they feel like they can just say whatever they want. And I always say people are really bold on the computer.
they are. They are. They act
Like
like we're
bold,
characters.
man, they will say whatever they want, but they're not going to say it to your face. You know what I mean?
No,
So
no,
at the end of the day, it's like everyone, has an opinion about something. A lot of it might be, projections, and sometimes people are just, not kind. So whatever it is, like, I think I couldn't imagine like being in that situation and just taking it from so many people that you don't even know, that don't know you personally, don't know your character. And so it's almost like you were thrusted into fame, like at a level that you hadn't, necessarily hit yet. And you were like labeled the villain in that. So, I can't even imagine what that does to your mindset. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But, the other thing that you mentioned was just something that I think is so important that we don't talk enough about is compatibility, and the reasons why you chose not to get married, and that should have been a whole conversation, and such an opportunity that was missed, and I think there needs to be more dialogue about that because not everyone is compatible. Like even if you, because like I think in that situation too, like you were, kind of in a unnatural situation getting to know someone, and then it became real,
yeah,
at the altar. So I
yeah.
can only imagine.
Yeah, because I feel like when it comes to men, like when it comes to like women not liking a guy, they really have no problem with letting you kind of know, or like cutting you off, or like articulating on social media, where it's like, you know, I do hear some guys do it and it's a very toxic way, like, oh, she doesn't do this, and it's like, that's not a good reason to break up. But shows like that, where it's like you're actually living with someone, we're having interviews, confessionals, like especially when it doesn't work out, I think that they could take a time to like really dive into, okay, so why didn't this work? And they even try to implement, if these factors weren't there, could it actually work? Like, I just think it's an opportunity that could be missed, because I believe that it's more fun, the drama of, hey, he said no at the altar, and we're not gonna air any of the scenes that his mom had with AD that explains why he might have said no. We're not gonna air the intimate scene that he had with AD, why he might have said no. We're just gonna put all the scenes of him looking like he's the red flag and AD's 100% ready, and I'm gonna just say no at the altar.
Yeah.
And it's like, how does that help anybody? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, and I think, there's, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because it's like they need that kind of drama for the type of show that it is. But
Yeah.
then, maybe in the aftermath of it all, there's such an opportunity there to kind of, share your piece. And so, like, what did that do though? I see a lot of celebrities like go a lot of different ways. Some of them crash out, some of them like go through depression, like when they have like maybe a bad instance, like out in public, and then now the public hates them. Like, I figure you're pretty recognizable now, right? And you're still working at your jobs, like people recognize you. Like, what was that like?
I went through a big verge of depression.
Mhm.
Um, but my depression was different because I was depressed in the house, but I still had to show up in public, because I still had to, host people on my boats. I still had to go through events. I still had to do brand stuff. I still had to do podcasts. I also understood that people didn't like me. I didn't want to throw AD under the bus. So I have to be politically correct when people are asking me, why did I say no? And not trying to say, hey, there are reasons, these are the reasons. And, there are reasons that might not make her look in the best light. So trying to articulate it in a way where it doesn't come off a way, because she's a good person, and she don't deserve that. So it was difficult. I felt like there was nothing I could do to be in the graces of good, the good graces of people. I think for a little second, I was fighting so hard to reclaim my storyline and be able to like let people know, like, that's not what happened. This is what really happened. But, I had to kind of come to the realization that understanding the perception, what the optics were. And a lot of times the optics matter more than what reality is. It's almost like if somebody puts out a lie and it gets on social media, but then you go to court and you clear it up, it might not be as popular. The clear up might not be as popular as the news. So I just had to understand that. And one thing I did a vision board this year. I'm just going to stride on peace of mind, making sure that I'm around people who love me, making sure that I'm doing things that feed me, and then also dropping the validation I have for other people. Like understanding that, okay, not everyone's gonna like me. Like I lived a little bit of a delusional bubble where even after me being an athlete, where I got a bunch of yes men and people like what I did, I had to drop that because I'm looking online and on my social media, and I could clearly see in a comment, the first comment I have is, I hate you. Why'd you do AD like that? And it's like, man, like I've never had hate like this. People in my life always appreciated me. I've always wanted people to do well. So it was definitely different navigating and getting thrust into somewhat of being a celebrity. And also everything I do being watched, from the grocery store to when I go out. So it's definitely affected my social life because, if I do anything outlandish, that's a story, or someone could get on social media and talk about it, and that could get some clicks and stuff like that. So it's definitely a little bit different, but I'm just trying to not take life as serious, just trying to do the best thing I could do, making sure I'm mature, making sure that I'm operating from a level of peace of mind. And I just try to go with this mentality that I'm doing the best I could do every single day. And that has been kind of a peace of mind that I've been kind of rocking with, and not just, letting other people's opinions get in too much in my head.
Yes, good. Oh, that's so well said. And I love that you talked about just like, your transitioned, like through this whole thing and how like understand that peace is where it's at, And so like one thing I'm so curious about, because it seems like you've been giving your power away. This is something I work on with my clients is like, who are you giving your power away? Like, where do you think that came from?
In terms of like me giving my power away, like me letting other people be like the master of my emotions.
Yep.
Um, it probably happened from my childhood, just like me kind of seeking that love from my dad, wanting to be like, looked upon. Me and my dad used to have car rides back at home, and he would tell me like, this is what if you want to be the man, this is what people are gonna do. This is how they're gonna receive you. This is things you need to do. This is if you want certain things to happen, this is what you need to. This is what you need to do. So I always kind of always had that in the back of my mind, and I just kind of always had a very I was very hard on myself with, where I wanted to be in life and like how I judge myself. So I've always kind of felt like if I didn't get that level of love, like my dad talked about, or having people like kiss the floor, want to do stuff for me, then, I must not be doing it. Like I must not be doing the right thing, And I never thought of it as such a toxic thing to have because I never really equated it to me seeking love. I just kind of felt like it was just me trying to be successful. And I was hey, somebody's doing something better than me. I need to go do what they're doing. But like, I didn't know that it was rooted from like a wrong place
Mhm.
until the show came out. And I was like, damn, why am I caring so much with people who I don't even, they're not even in my life. Why are their opinions affecting me so much? And I was crying and breaking down and like couldn't even get online and like really just kind of went through like one of the worst parts of my life last year and kind of me thinking like, man, it's not that big of a deal because it's not like I'm losing, not like a death is in my family. It's not like anything that they're saying is true. They're just saying stuff, and I just could not break it. I couldn't shake it. So that was the first time I even realized that I let other people be the master of my
Yeah.
emotions.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm just really appreciate your vulnerability because
Hmm.
we do it in so many instances throughout our life, and I used to do it especially when I was younger. I'd give my power away is what I like to call it.
Give my
Where,
power. I like that.
where you're because it's like you hold your, who you are and your validation should come from our higher power, whether you call them God or universe, source,
Yep.
But a lot of times we place so much weight with other people, and we allow them to determine, our moods. And a lot of that is we're giving our power away. And so one of the things I work on with clients is like reclaiming that power back, but also like turning your voice up louder and
Hmm.
other people's voices lower, so you can hear yourself more. And a lot of that, it seems like you're doing that work, and just practicing like stillness and mindfulness and putting yourself around good people. And so I love that for you.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I had to have people, I lost a lot of friends this last year. So unfortunately it kind of came at a cost, but you know, if if that's what takes for me to kind of get my power back, then so be it, right?
Thanks. Absolutely. And it's not easy, like parting ways with people, but if you look at it through a different lens, if I can give you a reframe, you know, um, we're not supposed to do life with everybody.
Hmm.
And, people come into our lives, you've heard the term for a season, a reason or a lesson, right? But I also think like if we look at it through a completely different lens, that we are divine creatures, right? We're these spiritual beings of light. And, we are having a whole human experience. And if you look at it through a learning, or like a student perspective, and allow yourself to be a student of it all, so then you can teach people along the way. Like you look at like, I guess detaching from things, completely different. So one of the things that I look at relationships, because I'm known for being like, cutthroat when it comes to detaching from things.
Yeah.
And Some people try to label me toxic, and it doesn't really move me.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like I'm not attached to any person, and I think that's where we make the mistake, because we attach to people, and we should be attaching to the love,
Yeah.
and but a lot of times we live such fear-based that we don't even recognize the love. And so it sounds like you were living very fear-based,
Yeah.
like, which we're all guilty of, so I love that you're allowing yourself to stand in a little bit more love. You deserve
Yeah.
it.
Yep. Appreciate that.
Yes, of course. Well, talk to me a little bit about, beyond the spotlight. Like, now that you've kind of put your phone down a little bit, have things slowed down? Have they, gone back to being somewhat regular, or are you still kind of dealing with some of the hate?
I'm not dealing with as much hate as I dealt with when the show came out. When the show came out, I think we was over like 1,000% engagement percentage on social media. So, like, I'm posting a story and I got like 200,000 people viewing it. I'm going from like 500 people looking at my story to now you got hundreds of thousands. So it's like I'm not getting that anymore. Like my algorithm has gotten back to regular. So yeah, it was crazy. But yes, things have been a lot more chill lately. I think that I came into this year recognizing that 2024 was just not a year that I enjoyed. I felt as though that I popped off the year wanting certain things, and then I ended the year saying I'm cool on it. I think I kind of readjusted what I'm in love with, and I think that I'm definitely I love peace of mind. I like waking up and not having like a big confusion and hole in my heart. I like knowing that people in my life are there. Like I didn't really like how 2024 went, and a lot of it kind of manifested from the show. But it's really just about me kind of getting that power back, like you alluded to, and not allowing other people to really validate me. And I feel as though like I did that with my vision board. I'm doing my discipline stuff where I'm reading every single day, making sure that I'm getting back into education, because that's something that makes me feel better in this world, is knowing that I'm getting smarter, or knowing that I'm learning something else and I could talk about something differently that day. Education, just evolving as a person, is something that helps me out in my life, and it makes me feel fulfilled. So I'm getting back into education and not more so putting harmful things like, constantly on social media looking at negative comments. Let me read a book about, how to execute my Roth IRA, or how to, utilize a trust that could, back up my business. Let me get some of that gems, because then I could teach that to somebody else. So I think that that's been some stuff that I've been doing. And then also like gearing towards my business, making sure that I'm focused on scaling up and seeing some improvement. So that's what a lot of my focus has been, is just how can I improve Clay every single day. And I think that I've been getting a lot of dopamine from a mental health perspective that way.
Yes, I have a motto which is not new. Stole it from James Clear, but
Yeah.
just getting 1% better every day. And really using that as my gauge. So I love that you're doing that and really feeding your soul, in a new way. And that's
Yep.
really what it's about. I mean, I know when we connected, you were reading a book, so I have to ask you, like, do you have any book recommendations for our audience?
So I just read The Millionaire Mind. It's a really good book. It's by Harv. Can't remember his last name. But really good book that kind of just challenges your mindset when it comes to money. And also like my relationship with money stems from how my parents' relationship was money. So in a sense of, if my parents was like, let's say my dad didn't close a deal and this month he was being a little bit cheap, and I say, hey dad, can I get some lunch money? I just need $5. And he's a little skeptical, give me that money. Well, then I could kind of grow up with a fear-based perspective when it comes to money and how I spend it. And it could kind of go two ways. I could be very cheap, or like, kind of protective of my money, or I could be rebellious because my dad was stingy with money and now I'm spending everything. Both ways is, you got to understand your money relationship. And I think that book was a clear indication of, okay, this is how I view money. This is what I did wrong. this is how I should change my mindset. So sometimes those books that kind of let you identify the root of the problem was good. I think Rich Dad Poor Dad is also always a good book to start off with just for financial literacy. It's one book that I'm excited to read. I might have it with me. Oh yeah, here it is. It's everyone keeps on recommending it. It's a psychology
Oh,
of money.
yes. It's
Yeah, I
a
heard.
it's a long one, and it's parts of it is difficult. I'm gonna be totally honest. It's
Okay.
a little rough to get through, but once you get in it, it's good. There's a lot of
Yeah.
great things in there.
I've been hearing some good stuff about it, so I'm
That's a
excited
good
to take a
one.
look at that.
Those are
Yeah.
great recommendations. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
No
And I
problem.
love how you explain that, and our relationship to anything, whether it's money, or a relationship with the person or a relationship with ourselves. Like it's so important to live, in more of a love state than a fear state. But a
Yeah.
lot of us operate, I mean, think about how many thoughts we have in a day. We tend to have like 50, 60,000 thoughts in a day, maybe more, and the majority of them are negative,
Yeah.
and so it's so important to improve, yourself in that way so you can, not saying that you're never going to live in a fear state, but, trying to steer more towards the love. So,
Yeah, the
thank
book states like whatever you put your energy towards,
yeah,
you will somehow receive it, like the law of attraction.
absolutely.
And I believe that I used to manifest a lot when I was younger. I used to have this actually, I had this little yellow golf club. I used to throw it up in the air and I used to get lost in space and just think of like, man, it would be like if I was like the most popular guy, like also seeking validation, but I used to manifest this validation, being this athlete and stuff like that. And like I remember when it happened, it just kind of just seemed regular because every single day I'll go home from school and I would envision this lifestyle. And it's the same thing when you're an adult, like manifesting who you want to be, the person that you want to be, and like really working towards that. And that energy and God, the universe, they will definitely see that and
Mhm.
try to see, try to help you out or equip you with the tools necessary to be that person that you want to become.
Absolutely. Well, you have to be the manifestation. That's what I tell
Mhm.
people. I think they get wrong because they think it's like affirmations and, well, if I say it over and over, it's like, no, you also have to be the manifestation. Like
Mhm.
I've been manifesting since I was a kid.
Yeah.
I'm an amazing manifester. Like
Yeah.
I'm serious. It blows my mind sometimes, but then a lot of times I'm like, well, it's kind of the history. So,
Yeah.
but I but when I look back, I'm like, I manifested being a track and field athlete at UCLA.
Mhm.
Like my dad took me when I was in sixth grade, and I didn't even know what I was going to do, but I was like, I'm going to get a scholarship here. I'm going to go to
Yeah.
school here. And I just kept saying it. Now, I didn't say that I was going to also graduate, which, I didn't graduate. I probably should have manifested that, but, I didn't let it stop me. But I look at that, even like with jobs, I would write down like what salary I wanted and I would just write that. And then I would think about like how I would spend that money, how I would, invest or save or, just that whole thing. It's like you have to become it,
Yeah.
and really, I say manifest from all your senses,
Mhm.
not just one. So I love that you talked about that. So important. Well, what's next for you? Like, what's next? Are you planning on going on any other shows?
No, no reality TV shows right now. I mean, I would do another show as long as
Would
it's not a
you?
dating show. As long as it's
Okay.
not a dating show.
Okay.
If it's like competitive or like, hey, helping someone out, yeah, I'll do that. Dating, I'm good on that. But I actually, I'm just gonna continue to doing some of the similar things that I was doing before I did the show. I felt like my life was great before I did the show, so it's like kind of just getting back into those things. I built an amazing company out here in Charlotte, North Carolina called Wave Sandy Water Rentals. So just more so pouring into that business. I'm getting ready to start hiring some folks, so I'm excited for that. We got a boat car coming, so we got upgrading the fleet with another boat and a boat car. So that's always exciting. And really just trying to get into the marketing this year. I'm also going to do a lot more with content. So making sure that I'm talking about more so of like, hey, my struggles with the show, my struggles with entrepreneurship, and also how I started my water rental company, and really just kind of building up my brand of who I am. I already did the show, and just helping people out where I can from a mental health perspective. I started up this channel on TikTok that I'm about to actually make a YouTube channel called Opinions That Nobody Asked For. And it's kind of just giving a voice to people who've done reality TV shows that didn't get the best edit. Because a lot of times America and the way how the network, they stash us away and make us look like we're just a villain. I was fortunate enough to have a little bit of motion where some people actually got, some brand deals, and I was able to get some motion. I was able to interview with some big entities where a lot of people who are good people who said no are villains, and they don't get those same opportunities. So I want to make this platform to kind of give people a chance to talk, also kind of critique, and get into the weeds of the recap game when it comes to reality TV. Since I'm in it, might as well try to do it from a best attribute and speak on my experiences, and I'm sure other people will resonate with that as well. So.
I love it. Well, you're using your test as your testimony. So, and any time that you have the ability to help others, like God takes us through life, and we have all these incredible experiences that really are meant to be shared in a way where we can, be of service to others. So I love what you're doing. Can't
I
wait to
appreciate it.
support.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on. I love this conversation. This
Yeah,
was the first. This was so cool though. I love
it,
it.
it
First
was
of
cool.
many. I'm gonna have you back
First of
on when
many.
you launch your pod, okay?
Yes, I will. I will.
Amazing. Well, everyone, as always, have a wonderful Sunday and do us a favor, share your favorite part about this conversation. Hold any negative comments. We're not doing that. This is not that kind of place. But show Clay some love and make sure you give him a follow.